I'm Ramses.
And I'm the Vesper.
And this time we're returning from GalaxyCon in Columbus, Ohio. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell so we can bring you many more where this came from as we head into Season 3. Vespers Convention Reviews! GalaxyCon in Columbus, Ohio, which took place in the Greater Columbus Convention Center from December 2nd to the 4th, 2022. So yes, we just attended our third and final convention for the season, and boy, this was very different than the ones we did previously in this season.
All the other conventions we had been put on by the same company, had the same feel, and had the same level of guests and events.
This was a very different experience, and we're going to give you a day-by-day detail of how our experiences went at this convention from the 2nd to the 4th. We'll start with Friday, December 2nd, 2022. That was our first day there, and we'll get going right now. Let's get right into it.
All right, I'll go ahead and open up by saying that when we got here to Columbus, the roads were a mess, but all roads are a mess in the big cities, and finding parking is usually the first thing you have to worry about when going to a con. And we didn't have to necessarily worry about that because, thank goodness, the Greater Columbus Convention Center had a lot of parking. Now, there's always a price to pay for parking at a convention, and the price for our parking was $20 for the entire day, which meant we were not leaving the convention center. If we couldn't walk to it, we weren't going anywhere.
The good news is we didn't really have to leave. There's so much going on at this convention, you're not really going to want to leave. They have fast food courts all over the place, easily accessible places outside if you do want to venture. It was a little cold, we should tell you guys. It was about high 40s, low 50s, and there was definitely wind chill in the air, so it wasn't really walking temperature, but you could walk very easily to food places within a mile walking distance. So you really don't have to leave the car. And yes, it was $20, not the worst thing in the world. So $60 pretty much to attend 3 days there. That's not the end of the world for a big city convention. So we found a parking spot in one of the many available parking lots, and you have to all remember, people, Saturday's the big day, Friday's the low, because not everybody takes off from work. We did the 3-day pass here. You had many options for how you're going to buy your pass.
This is a much bigger con, and a lot more of it was done online. There were many different levels, and they really didn't offer too much to you besides giving you more extras.
Yep, you could buy the VIP pass, you get all this swag with it. You buy the deluxe pass, which is what we did. We bought the 3-day deluxe pass. You get a little something, but not much else. It's pretty much just saying, yeah, you get a little bag. It comes with some free comics. It's not a big deal. Most people did the 3-day pass, or most people did the Saturday pass.
Look at this. See all these pre-registration? There's literally only one line for VIP and press, and one line for the 3-day deluxe pass. Almost 90% bought the regular one, which is just fine.
The only difference we saw in the VIP, so if you got some fast passes, meaning you can get autographs, not included by the way, it just means you get early access to getting the autographs that you still have to pay for, so that's not even a big deal. You get better seating, better priority, again, not a big deal. These places were vast, that wasn't a problem. So deluxe was fine for us, but your results only vary, and the prices were all over the range when it came to that stuff. And there you go. But you think it would be easy, you just walk in. We have the tickets printed out, you think you just walk in and here you go. No.
Well, when we walked in, we're like, where is the line starting? There was no predefined line where you go. As a matter of fact, as you can see here, it is just a line down the center of the convention hall. So, not a very encouraging thing to see at the beginning where you have no idea what's going on and nothing's clearly marked out, except for this nice sign that says registration area, and you're just hoping you're in the right line.
We were probably in the line about a half hour, maybe an hour even. It went by very fast though, because we were talking to everyone. Everyone was just as excited we were. Everyone was there about 10 o'clock and registration opened at 11. But it wound up we were in the right line, so that worked out. And it was a little disorganized, but once they let you into the registration area, it flew by. You gave them your ticket, they beeped you in, they gave us the deluxe pass in the bag, and that was the end of it. Now, the first thing we did after we got our tickets was we had to learn this place. Like I mentioned, this is a gigantic area, the Greater Columbus Convention Center. It's massive. It's definitely made for exactly this event. It's attached to a hotel. It's attached to parking garages. There's exits, there's entrance, there's doors, everything you can think of. We have never been here before, so we had to learn the lay of the land. That was the first thing we did. And they had all the interesting rooms here. So all the guests are going to be separated into what stage. They call it stage for the room they're going to be in. They have the comedy stage for people that are going to be more comedic. They have the super stage for hero-related guests. And then they have the main stage, that's for the big A-class stars, and the hero stage next door to that, where they have A stars also, but not as big as the main stage stars.
And here to give you an idea, here is the layout right here for you to look at so you can see what we're talking about here. And as you can see, this is laid out not too badly. The main hall was where the main exhibitors were. Over here in the VIP entrance, by the way, which was crazy, and we'll go into more of that in a moment. In Exhibit Hall B was your main vendors, and in Exhibit Hall A was your autographs, photo opportunities, things like that.
They had a wrestling themed area, which you're going to be shocked to know we didn't do it all, because unfortunately the wrestling wasn't really WWF/WWE related. So they had a whole wrestling ring set up. So they were ready to do cosplays, fake wrestling stuff, events, speakers in the ring. It was going to be very interesting. Unfortunately, they didn't have any guests we wanted to see. And then below that, they had a video game area. Every video game you can think of from every generation, from Atari all the way to PlayStation 5, they had a console.
Notice all the different consoles. You also notice that each of them had different types of TVs depending on the age of the console. And everything was laid out very well.
Now, the first thing we're going to do is go into the exhibit halls, because the exhibit halls has all the vendors, all the autographs, all the photos. Everything that you want to do without going to a panel is in these exhibit halls. Door A is all over the place, and door B is all over the place. If you don't have a VIP, you have to go to the door B. If you have a VIP, you can go to the door A. That's pretty much what the problem is.
There's 9,000 entrances, and they guard like 2 of them. That being said, they guard you from going in, not coming out. So you have people coming out from every aspect of this hall, and they run up and down trying to stop you from going in where somebody's exiting.
Oh yeah, and the guard guarding the VIP door for entrance A, he was strict as strict. He took it very seriously. He wasn't letting anyone in. He was all day long just stopping people. It wasn't made clear that it's a VIP entrance. That was another problem. Not everything was marked properly. It just said had pass ready. It said that at both doors. It was kind of silly. I don't even get what the big deal was.
That entrance, which just lets you directly into the autograph area, which doesn't prevent you from entering the main hall and literally walking 100 feet down the side of it to get to the exact same area.
But that all out of the way, we finally get to the exhibit hall, and you know Vesper and myself love to buy merchandise when we're at this. That's one of our biggest goals at these conventions, is to see what swag they have to purchase.
We love these things. It's American pop culture, and it's wonderful, and I like collecting it, and I like to get the nice things. And here they had tons of it. They had more than I ever dreamed of. They even had an artist alley, folks. It was absolutely amazing, and I highly enjoyed what they had to offer here.
They had aisles and aisles and aisles of just merchandise and artists and celebrities. It was crazy. It really was, and it was packed on some of these things.
Even on Saturday, we were able to move and look at each and every vendor we wanted to without feeling rushed or crushed by the crowd.
We did get lost a lot, but you're going to get lost when you have rows and rows and rows and rows of just non-stop merchants. It's very confusing trying to find where each merchant was.
There was places where you could actually look on the sides instead of being forced down an aisle instead of going to the end and coming around.
Right.
It made a lot more room and a lot more sense.
And it was a lot more friendly to the fans, and that's what I like about this over the other ones we've been to. They had a sign very clearly saying, please note, cameras will be and are allowed to use. They want you to take pictures, they enjoy you taking pictures, and they're very proud they can take pictures. Other ones were like, oh, no pictures allowed for celebrities, or oh no, you can't take pictures of this, and oh no. It was very different feeling and very friendly and welcoming, and that's how it should be. Yes, they're charging you for everything here, but at least they got that right in that this is for the fans. Let them do what they got to do, you know? So now we'll just give a quick run through in the concessions. First time in there, we just did a lay of the land. We wanted to see what was out here, and there's everything you could think of. We went through artists, and then we went through some toy stands, some figurine stands, lots of anime stuff, lots of movie memorabilia, lots of pop culture, and of course comic book stuff was all over the place too.
And an amazing amount of cosplayers. They were everywhere. I would dare to say that fully half of the attendees here were in costume, and it was amazing.
Everything was on the table. We had Spider-Mans, we had Final Fantasy, we had comic book characters, we had video game characters, we had Mario characters, we had Star Trek characters, Star Wars characters, you name it, they had it here. So there you go, that was our quick run through, and now let's get to what you're really here for, our panels, Q&As, and the events that we're here to see. We should mention that GalaxyCon is a very big convention franchise, so they're all over the country, and that's why this had such a big professional feel to it. They know what they're doing. They were going to make mistakes, and we're about to get to some of that on the first day here, we'll mention. But they know how to run a good show. They really had big guests. They had a great knowledge of what was going on. They seemed to know what they're doing. So this is a big deal. If you're going to do GalaxyCon, there you go. You're getting a big name in the business. Their first year taking over for the previous Columbus Con, and that happens a lot also. I'm sure we're not telling you breaking news here, but smaller convention companies will get bought out by bigger convention companies, and it becomes part of their umbrella. Columbus is now part of the GalaxyCon umbrella, and very impressive. I would definitely recommend it. But again, wait till the end for our reviews. So now what you should know is this is a very packed convention. There's going to be events happening all day, and they're not parallel to each other. Unlike the other ones we've gone to where they're sort of happening at the same time and you get to choose. This one, no. Every 15 minutes they're throwing in different events. So you really have to choose very carefully what you want to do. And I know they do this because they want you to get a flavor of different things. Like people might complain, oh, I want to see this and that. This way you get to see a little of this and a little of that instead of just one or the other.
And you're going to find out very quickly that there's events starting every 15 to 30 minutes apart.
So we had to pre-plan, yes. We had to look through the whole entire schedule and pretty much plot out what we wanted to do because we, as your faithful reviewers here, wanted to give you full and in-depth reviews of everything we wound up doing. And that didn't always work out, by the way, as we're going to get to in a second because unforeseen things happen. But we did at least want to try to plot out our grid here in the schedule. We're like, oh, we better eat something. We're going to have a lot of shows happening in between here. We better find something to eat. And as we mentioned at the beginning here, there's a great food court with lots of food options. So we went over there. We went to the south side of the building again. We looked over all the food choices. You know Ramsis here. He likes pizza again. It's not a difficult choice. I was like, oh, cool. They have Sicilian-style pizza at this place, Jet's Pizza. Very simple.
By the way, you're not going to find a better deal at any of the cons we've been to for lunch because it also included a 20-ounce drink, folks. For $7.
Very good deal. And the pizza was actually very good. They called it Detroit style, but it was really New York Sicilian style. Take it from me, a former New Yorker. Vesper got the jet breadsticks, which were cheese upon cheese upon cheese, and it came with a sauce. Really good. That's what we did for lunch. Looks so good, doesn't it? Melts right in your mouth. We're not going to be able to eat for the rest of the day here, if that gives you any clue. We were saving our first Q&A for one of our favorites, one of the legends, Brent Spiner. Data on Star Trek, and he was also in many, many TV shows, Night Court, for instance. He was all over the place, Brent Spiner. So what happened? We show up to the room at 3:45. Oh, we're here for Brent Spiner. And they're like, sorry, he canceled today. And we're like, what? You can go into the other room, someone else is in there. And we're like, oh boy, what a bummer. So we're like, well, who's in there? And they're like, we don't know. So we peek into there, and it's the Riddler voice actor, John Glover. And I really shouldn't even call him the Riddler voice actor because he did 3 episodes in Batman, the animated series. Oh well, it fits into our show. It's definitely retro. And, you know, I'm excited because I love to see voice actors. It's a lot of fun when they talk about the voice behind the characters and how they go into it and how they get in the mood for the characters. It's actually a lot of fun. I love hearing it. So we come in mid-progress, we already missed 15 minutes.
And we see our moderator, which we're going to find out there are many different moderators.
And I'll show you a picture of this guy here.
We're going to call him Joe Jr. because of some resemblances.
Yes, Joe Jr. here monopolizes the conversation. He did not give these celebrities a chance to talk. And John Glover couldn't talk because I think he was too old, too forgetful, and too not there anymore. And I'm surprised they even had him here. It was very disappointing, to say the least. Pretty much any question asked, he had no idea what you were talking about, and he didn't remember, and he didn't recall anything.
Except if it involved one of his many artsy-fartsy movies that he did.
I could see he was losing his memory very clearly. He would fumble for a second and say, you know, I don't remember that. Yeah, you know, that must have been, oh. And that would be it. That would be like the whole conversation. So even the moderator gave up on trying to cover questions, and he pretty much just handed it over to the crowd. The crowd would start to ask very specific questions also.
And by the way, this is the only time that we experience this. Joe Jr. here having to pick hands up and point, and he's just like, you over there, or you over there. And the question would be asked, and then the guy would stammer for a little bit, and then sort of do what I like to call the Flash Gordon defense, in that he would just totally take it to another tangent and talk about anything else but what you asked.
Oh yeah, for instance, right, someone asked him, about this role and that role. They were asking very specific questions, and then he'd be like, I had so many roles, you know, I enjoyed all of them. I was like, wow, okay.
This is the only time I've been able to ask during the entire convention. I always love to ask, what's their favorite role? So after asking that, he goes, you know what? Have you ever heard of 52 Pickup? I played a marvelous villain role. I was like, okay, was that your favorite? And
I was like, favorite? just be sure to see it. It's a wonderful movie. Oh, you probably never even heard of it. And we're like, nope, we never heard of that.
That was the problem. We didn't know if this was his favorite or if this is what he thought at the time.
And the moderator tried to get him back in after that because he saw that was just awkward and weird. And Vespor tried, and the questions were sort of stopping after that because this was going nowhere. Oh, do you want to talk about some of your roles? Like you were in Scrooge. Me and Vespor were like, oh, he was in Scrooge. I don't remember that. And the guy didn't remember either. The moderator had to explain pretty much what part he had. The whole thing was very strange. I mean, that was our first Q&A here. It was pretty much a disaster. So, again, we're like, well, that sucked. Let's see what else there is. So we're like right next door to the main stage. They had another celebrity already ready. So we're like, all right, that Q&A sucked. Let's hope for better. We walk next door. We find out that at 5 o'clock, they're going to have James Arnold Taylor. And that's a very big voice actor. You might not realize who he is, but he is actually a very big voice actor.
Actually, you will recognize him if you've seen the Clone Wars. He's Obi-Wan.
And he's Titus from Final Fantasy X, and he's the voice of Ratchet and Clank. So yes, he was a very big voice actor, and he was very proud to tell us that. But this is going to be so much better than what we just saw. This guy has a sharp brain. He knows what he's doing there. So this is more like what we had in mind. This is going to be actually a lot of fun, and we were actually excited. We had a different moderator this time, too. So we'll just call him Fred, because why not? He looks like a Fred. See what he looks like? This is the other moderator. He was the better, quote-unquote, moderator. He definitely did a better job. He was more on the ball. He kept the audiences more organized for these celebrities, but he still wasn't great. Fred here was all over the place, but at least he kept the show running better than Joe Jr.
Oh, absolutely. Now, of all the voice actors we've listened to quite a few. He actually explained the business of what it means to be a voice actor very well. He talks about voice doubling and things like that, things we never even heard of, and it sounded awesome.
He almost said, you name it and I can do it, and I have done it. So he was able to imitate every voice he can do. He was doing all the celebrity voices, Dana Carvey, Johnny Carson, you name it. He was able to just throw them out, and he was doing it for us, and then he was doing Titus, and he was doing Johnny Test, and he was even doing Fred Flintstone, because he's a voice for Fred Flintstone in some things. Very cool, and he was very proud of that. And he also did something very interesting that none of the other celebrities at this whole entire convention did. He showed video footage on his own. He was controlling a computer in front of him, and whenever it called for a moment, he would push the button. Do you know that Titus's name is actually Titus, and everyone always pronounces it Titus? And everyone's like, what? So yeah, he had a funny little clip to show the difference between Titus and Titus, and he was talking to himself with a pre-recorded footage of making fun of the fact that people didn't say it right. So it was very funny stuff that he was doing there.
And unlike a lot of the voice actors, barring Kevin Conroy, because he was by far one of the best ones, and he did not care to drop into his Batman voice whenever.
No, yeah, he was very proud of it.
This guy didn't mind to drop into Obi-Wan or any of the other voices, and he loved showing off. And it drew you in.
The moderator we're calling Fred did a very good job keeping it organized. This one formed a line in the aisle, and it was a little annoying because that's something else you had to learn about the main room, as we learned very quickly, and we didn't make that mistake again. Don't sit on the left side of the main area of the main room, because you will be blocked by a gigantic 20-person filled line, all standing in front of a microphone that's right in the aisle there, and it'll block your view permanently. He was another one of these celebrities that's his own biggest fan, and we're going to find on Friday that that's going to mix. Some aren't their own biggest fans, some are proud of the work they did, some aren't proud of the work. We're going to find the celebrities differ in how they really view their own work, but they all appreciate the fans. I'm not going to say any of them didn't. Every single one we saw on Friday appreciated the fans, and no one appreciated them more than James Arnold Taylor, who was putting on video shows and highlights and clips, doing voices, making us laugh, really going into the business. It was very interesting stuff.
Highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to see him at a convention, go and see him. He is worth it. You will definitely come out feeling enlightened and entertained all at once. You wouldn't think that from going to one of these panels.
Anyway, 3 in a row now. We are going to see another big name Q&A, and this guy should be a legend to a lot of you guys. It is John Delancey. There you go. Yes, that guy. Q from Next Generation and all the spin-offs and everything else. And yes, Discord from My Little Pony. We do have to throw that in there for any of you watching this because of that reason. He did go into that a little bit too.
You've seen him in Star Trek The Next Generation as being this over-the-top, omnipotently powerful character that was just fun to watch his shenanigans. Even in My Little Pony's Discord, he was over-the-top and caused trouble and mayhem. So you're thinking, oh, this guy's going to be funny, crack jokes, be lighthearted, and generally enjoy all these roles that, for the most part, most of us seen as being sort of, maybe an aspect of John Delancey himself.
Well, we couldn't have been more wrong because it's not at all what it was. Now, before we get into this, we should also mention the celebrities seem to have a choice if they want the commentator or not. So John Delancey did not want a commentator, so he was doing this solo and running the show himself. But I think all the ones that run it themselves need a commentator because it got very dry, slow, and just without any passion after a while. So of course the conversation went into Star Trek Picard, and we're not going to really get into Picard because we're a retro show, we don't do new shows like that. But it came up a lot, and it was a very big deal to John Delancey because without anyone asking, that was the first story he went into about his experiences getting onto Picard.
When he was speaking about Q and his reprisal of the role, he made a distinct difference about whenever you're bringing up an older character into a newer setting. And I believe this applies to every character when we explain our feelings why we don't necessarily like reboots or reimaginings.
So John Delancey saying, I don't want to just bring it back. I think we had closure, that's it. And they were like, no, John, we're going to go on a different path. We're going to do something different. And John said, oh, well, if that's the case, then okay, I'll do it. And John wanted to do something different, but I think it was more he get bored. It's a job to him, and he wanted something different. He didn't want to just wear the same tight 80s outfit where it was the captain's outfit was so tight he couldn't move. He didn't want to do the same silly one-liners anymore. He wanted to do something different, a little more serious, and he was happy that he got to actually wear a regular comfortable suit, and he got to act a little different, and he was in trouble this time, and it was sort of like he was having to be saved now. So he did something different, and to him, I think he viewed it as a job, not a like, wow, I really saved the day here by making Q so different.
And I totally agree with that. Whenever John Delancey got on the stage, he answered these questions to the best of his ability, although he was by far, in my opinion, too professional about it. Because they did ask him about what his favorite role was, and he said, no, I don't really have a favorite role, which to me is the weakest answer you could ever give.
And I didn't buy it, I'll be very honest. I know he loves Q best. That's what made him. That's what, yes, he's been in TV shows, he's been in movies, he's been in cartoons. Q is his favorite role. Don't let him fool you. And he didn't want to say it for whatever reason. I think he's trying to be the serious actor on the stage, but I don't like when they answer it.
Because, I mean, no matter what you do in life, there's always going to be a favorite. You're going to have your favorite soda, you're going to have your favorite food, you're going to have your favorite movie.
Everyone has their own. No, not with John Delancey. He was coming off so stiff, and I was surprised. Somewhere he lost the passion in all this. I don't know if it was Picard, I don't know if it's because he's an older man now. He was very just by the books. Yes, it was great writing. Yes, it was wonderful people. Oh, it was great behind the scenes. It was always complimentary to everybody else, but Parisha thought he actually has fun and compliment himself. Now, he did mention My Little Pony, and we should mention that because that's his second most famous job. And even that, I've seen him before, so passionate and loving of it. He just gave like a very quick story about the history of how he got the part of Discord. They pretty much said the character Discord, My Little Pony Friendship Magic, is pretty much a clone of Q from Star Trek. And they hired him because that's what they thought they meant by saying, oh, it's Q, we should get the Q actor. And they didn't understand that this was a way to explain it. We didn't mean get the actor, but he became synonymous with it too. He didn't talk much about it. He just said it was wonderful. He said the show is meant for 8-year-old girls, but then he learned what the term brony made, and that was like the only laugh he got during the whole entire show.
I mean, he has some very moving things, as I said earlier, and they make a lot of sense, but it was almost like he was not allowing himself to have fun anymore. And I don't know what happened. I agree with Ramses. This, by far, was still a great improvement over what we saw earlier today in John Glover. He actually enjoys acting and still remembers a lot of what he did. It's just his non-commental attitude that sort of just irked you because he wouldn't say yay or nay about anything.
We learned a lot because he did talk a little bit about stuff, but nothing about himself, nothing about his feelings, nothing about anything personal. He was very complimentary, very nice, and he was very appreciative, and I do like him for that, but that was about all we got out of it.
And so we finished our time with John Delancey, and we had just enough time to do a little bit of shopping in the exposition, because we finished the first day without even exploring 3/4 of the floor, by the way.
That's how big this area is, yes.
So, after we spent a little time doing that, we didn't even have time to eat dinner, folks, until later. And then we headed straight on to our next event.
So yeah, no dinner, but that's all right. We had our pizza for lunch. We're good. We're still taken care of. Let's go do what the next special event of Friday is going to be. And this is great. When we saw the option for this, we're like, oh, we got to do that. They have the voice actor from Muppets, the former voice of Kermit, Steve Whitmire. Took over for Jim Henson after he passed away as the voice of Kermit and various other characters. And he was in a little movie called The Muppet Christmas Carol in 1992, made by Disney.
Now, before we go into our experiences with this, we do want to point out, this is a much bigger convention. They also had paid events. Now, some of these paid events were for certain actors, like Kevin Smith. And there was also a paid event for Smallville and some other ones. This was also one of the other ones you had to pay to get in. Now, unlike the other ones, this money was used because they had to play an actual Disney movie and pay rights to basically rent it for the night to play it.
Right, you're getting a 1 hour and a half movie that's going to be live commentated by the main Kermit voice actor himself, Steve Whitmire. So yeah, they're going to charge you admission as if you're paying to see the movie, which is great, and then they're going to charge you a little extra if you want some bonuses on top of that.
There was 3 tiers to this. You had the $10 entry fee, which was third seating priority, no big deal. You had the $25 one, which was second seating priority, which means you got closer to the stage, basically, and you got a few little things extra with it, nothing significant. And then you paid the VIP first entry.
Along with the little extra gifts you would have gotten for the $25 one, yes.
Yes, $50. You get pictures with Steve after the movie. So there you go. That's how they did it. And congratulations to them. There was some people, not a lot, that actually went for the VIP. Most went for the 25 so they could get closer to the screen instead of being like us plebeians who paid $10 to just be able to sit in the same theater as Kermit the Frog.
So this is great. We didn't know what to expect. We did the $10. We're like, hey, I just want to get in the thing and see the movie. We've seen the Christmas Carol before, Muppet Christmas Carol, so this is not a new movie to us. We've seen it many times. Who hasn't?
However, as with all events, there is a line. However, this is when we realized that this con might not be as organized as we originally thought, because there was the biggest twisty, windy snake there ever was of people trying to get in line to go to this event, and everyone was going, well, are you priority 1, 2, or 3? And everybody's going, well, I'm this, I'm that, and we were just like,
we're just gonna stand here. I don't know. And they were like, yeah, stand here. Like, okay.
And then that's when they sent out 2 people to literally just scan the tickets.
Yeah, the guy came around and said priority seating, and we said, oh, well, we have a priority. He looked at the ticket and said, okay, enjoy the show. We had a guy with VIP in front of us. We had people with 2s all over the place. We're a regular general admission. And we were like, are you sure? He's like, yep, priority seating, stand here. We're like, okay.
And they gave us this.
Even the tag to get into the event is a nice little plastic tag. They really went all bells and whistles on this, very nice. And it was really pointless because it didn't mean anything. They pretty much, once you walk in, you're never going to ever look at this thing ever again in the history of this event.
Yeah, and it doesn't really even give you anything special. This was a complete fiasco getting into it.
That doesn't ruin the show and it doesn't ruin the event, but just so you know, it was a mess. All you needed was some barriers, keep the rows separated. We couldn't even hear, oh, we're letting in VIP as well. No one could hear anything. We had no idea when anyone was coming in. They didn't have like a portable microphone. That's an easy technology to have.
The room that they held this event in, they decorated the front stage with Christmas trees and ornaments to give you a nice Christmas feel for it. And, you know, it worked very well. And that's when we got to meet our newest favorite moderator of this con, in Fred. And he was very good at his job. And it also helped that Steve Whitmer was a wonderful human being and person who not only was very happy to talk about his time as a puppeteer, but also give the audience a surprise. And Ramsey, what was that surprise again?
Yes, he said, you're not going to believe this, folks. You know how many people worked on this movie? I got you one of the biggest names from this movie. And lo and behold, the screen turns on and then you see Frank Oz as the name there. He's not, his face wasn't there, but the name Frank Oz was on the screen. The crowd went ballistic. Everyone knows who Frank Oz is. Miss Piggy, Yoda, you know who Frank Oz is, one of the biggest of biggest. But getting Frank Oz onto the screen took like another 2 minutes because he was a little camera shy. He doesn't do conventions. It should also be a well-known fact. Frank Oz never does it. He does not like speaking in public, doesn't like to do these. So to get Frank Oz even to show up was a very big deal. He had to pull a lot of strings to get his friend to show up here. FaceTime, Discord, or one of those. Yeah, it was one of those online apps, and it was great. It took about 2 minutes, a lot of joking back and forth. Finally, Frank Oz showed up to talk to the crowd for about 5 minutes, which was an amazing, unexpected surprise here. He's making fun of Steve the whole time because Steve has this long flowing hair that goes down to his shoulders. Funny stuff. It was great banter back and forth. And you can see they're just 2 old friends rekindling again before they both talk about a great movie that they both had a big part in.
Yep. And after his joking around with Steve, he signed off so we could begin the movie. And I will say this. He was very informational about the movie and would also commonly joke to the fact that whatever he said was probably already said on internet and YouTube, and then the moderator would be like, well, yeah, actually it was.
I did look up when we got back to the hotel room. Yes, IMDb pretty much had every single thing they talked about, so they were pretty much just reading off a list. Didn't ruin it, I'm just saying it was all out there. There was no secrets revealed to it.
Nope, but it was still a very fun experience, and I thought he was going to be stopping every 10 minutes. And much to his credit, he only stopped a few times during the movie, but when he did stop, it wasn't just for 2 or 3 words. He actually had a little story to go with it.
Now, we should mention some downsides of this viewing. Now, it was a wonderful thing. It's so much fun sharing this with, let's say, 100 people. I think it was more than that, but I'll give a general number of 100. All sitting in this room here to watch on the screen on the left side of the wall a Muppet Christmas Carol, while Steve Whitmer stops the movie every 15 minutes or so, give or take 20 minutes to talk a little bit about some of the scenes we saw. Great stuff. The downsides are the seating was terrible. This room was not made to watch a movie. Every seat is on the same exact plane. The floor is as sea level as you can get. You cannot see over any tall person. It's all random where you get to sit in this, and you're trying to look up, and you just have heads upon heads upon heads in front of you. You're all bending to every direction. Everyone's moaning and complaining. Everyone's getting up the whole time. Very uncomfortable. I feel like I saw 2/3 of the movie because so many heads were covering the screen. Very disappointing. Nothing you could do about that, but that's the experience we had.
Actually, there was something they could have done, Ramses. They could have raised the screen up another 2 or 3 feet, and none of this would have been a problem.
That's very true. The screen was eye level to everybody. Showing a movie with a packed arena, and you can't see over his head. Very disappointing.
But overall, it was a very enjoyable event. Well worth the time. By the time we were done, it was well after 10, so we had to get ready and head back to our hotel for the evening.
And we didn't eat. We realized, we didn't have time to eat dinner because everything was jam-packed into everything. And we, being the loyal reviewers for you guys, we didn't want to miss a minute at anything we did, so we can give you as in-depth reviews as possible.
Yes, and because of this, we were too caught up in getting out of the hotel to get food to realize that we should have just probably walked back to the food court, which we found out was open to 11.
Columbus is not known for being a 24-hour city. Yes, things are open 24 hours, but most of the stuff wasn't, and you don't want to be walking on an unfamiliar street at 11 or 12 o'clock at night trying to figure out where you're going. Well, head back to the hotel. There has to be food places. No. There was nothing open around us. We're like, boy, even a convenience store? No. The supermarket convenience stores were out of food. The restaurants were all closed at 11 o'clock. The pizza places didn't deliver here. Domino's didn't deliver. It was like, all right, this is getting crazy. What are we going to do? We found a supermarket open till midnight, a Mayor supermarket. So there you go. That solved our problem. We're only telling you this because we want you to get the full experience of what we had to deal with to get you this in-depth review here. We couldn't even eat dinner. We had to go to the supermarket. We both got frozen microwavable pizzas, some snacks.
And potato salad.
Yes, and some potato salad, of course. That held us over. We watched the movie, went to sleep, and there you go. That was our Friday experience of GalaxyCon in Columbus.
What a Friday. Wow. It was rushed. The con was full on Friday, and it was excellent.
So Saturday, December 3rd rolls around. Now today starts a little earlier. 10:30 was the starting mark for Saturday attendees, and they warned us, as they always warn us, Saturday is going to be busy, and they were not kidding. We arrived a little later than 10:30 because we really had nothing planned until 11:30 in the day. So we'll go at 11 o'clock. That gives us more than enough time. Not the best idea. It worked out fine, but it was definitely busy. We went to the same parking lot that we went to yesterday, and you know how some of those parking lots have counters on them, like they say how many spots are remaining? It was funny because we rolled up and the ticker was going down rapidly as we were sitting there waiting to get into the parking lot.
Oh, and by the way, these parking lots hold hundreds of cars. By the time that we were finished and parked, there was 1 spot left.
So it was full. We walked in and they said, sorry folks, you have to wait right here. We can't let anyone down. It's just too hectic down there. So we couldn't go down the escalator for about, I want to say 2 minutes at most. It wasn't even that big a deal.
This is a giant convention hall here. It was packed. The nice thing about all this seemed to be the gathering area for most of the people.
That's right. It takes you a while to walk from one end of this hallway to the other. So more than enough room for everything, but it was packed. They weren't kidding. This was going to be the big day of the event, and it was. They put all the A-list stars on this day, and all the events were going on. Forget our plans for 11:30. We were going to just do some silly thing.
Yeah, instead, we went shopping because, quite frankly, we didn't get to finish it on Friday. And we was afraid if we waited later in the day on Saturday, there'd be nothing left. And we had to give up a few things, but in hindsight, we really didn't miss much.
Yeah, the original plan was, even if we had to keep leaving things, at least we would give you guys a taste of some of the other stuff. And then we decided, you know something, it's probably better that we do full things and not give you a little taste, because what's the point of giving a taste? But of course, ironically, the first thing we do is going to be a taste of something. I'm sorry, it just worked out that way for a very important reason, but I'll get to that in a minute. The floor was packed where all the vendors were, so we got all the little stuff that we wanted to then. But then we realized, you know something? William Shatner is at 12:30. So we decided we're going to wait in line. We saw a line was already forming. Like, oh, wow, that's how popular William Shatner is. A line is already forming in front of the main room. And like, no, go in. After like 2 2 minutes of waiting, they let everyone in. We're like, oh, they already let us in. I guess the other panel let up. We didn't know what the other panel was at this time.
Yeah, we were a little bit confused because we're like, this seems a little early because previous panel started at 11:30.
That was our own mistake. We didn't realize what was actually going on at the time and why they're letting people in early.
Well, lo and behold, we were let in. We thought, all right, we're going to get to sit immediately for William Shatner. And then we walk in, place is completely packed. We're like, oh my God, thank God we got here over a half hour early before his thing started. And then we found somebody was on the stage talking, and that person had to be Jodie Whittaker, aka the Doctor.
That's right, 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, and we didn't realize. And this is not a good or bad or otherwise. We just don't do current stuff. We're a retro show here, as you guys should know by now. So we didn't want a current Doctor. If it was an older Doctor, it would have been great. But we're like, oh, Jodie Whittaker. Guess we'll just have to sit there because the way that GalaxyCon does their cons is once you're in the room, they do not force you to leave when the next panel's about to happen. Lexington Comic and Toy Convention made you leave the rooms before the next panel. GalaxyCon didn't.
I want to thank Lexington Comic and Toy Convention for doing that because this can be abused so much because later on throughout the day, we got to see people doing the exact same thing of just sitting there, so you couldn't get any good seats.
Right, so nothing against Jodie Whittaker, but we really weren't interested because we don't watch the current Doctor Who and we only review 70s, 80s, and 90s and early 2000s stuff here, so that was out of our breadbasket. We saw about 25 minutes of Jodie Whittaker. We'll add her to reviews now because I said as long as we see a portion of it, we are going to review it.
At least enough to give a review on.
She was very energetic. She was very excited to be there. She loved being there. She loved the show. She loved that she was an important part of it. Again, I don't know much about it. I'm not into Doctor Who, but she was her own biggest fan. I will definitely say that. She broke barriers somehow by being on the show and how important she was and how big a deal this was and how great she was. Remember we used to joke about Kevin Conroy, may he rest in peace, Juilliard. Well, I got that same feeling with Jodie Whittaker. I'm great, I'm barriers, I'm important, this is wonderful, I'm so honored. It was like she kept repeating the same like 2 words over and over and over again. I don't understand what's going on. She was energetic and bubbly and excited and she was happy and she loved what she did on the show. That's what I could take from all this.
Oh, absolutely. And we saw enough of her to say that she actually blew out several previous speakers from the day before. She was that good, but unfortunately we really didn't pay much attention, and quite frankly I am a Whovian, but I haven't watched it since Matt Smith was the Doctor, so I really know nothing about her other than to say that she was very lively.
Yeah, she sure was, and the host was loving her. The host that we called Fred, he was in love with her. He was very happy. He would run candy up to her. He was kissing her. I don't know what was going on. Like I said, it was very strange and surreal. But it was a lot of fun. I have to admit that. It was fun because she was just so excited to be there. I wish we got that energy from a lot of these other guests.
Oh, absolutely. So, what happens at the end of Jodie Whittaker? Just like the previous day, they started taking group selfies, which is everybody piles up to the stage, they get a professional photographer, and take a picture of the crowd waving. About half of the audience that was there, that's jam-packed place, was only there for Jodie Whittaker, and then they left, and then they let the rest of fans of William Shatner come in, and guess what? Another completely packed and filled auditorium.
Yes, and the best part of all this is when everyone went to get their selfies, me and Vespor did the old tiptoe. We went to the actual seats we wanted to. We didn't get front row because people were smart enough not to move from the front row seats. But we got a wonderful aisle seat, and as you can see in the picture here, I was able to get a very good angle. It was very nice seats, and yeah.
Here's where we started to see things starting to go awry. William Shatner comes out to a standing applause. Then the moderator literally just goes up there to move his chair into the center of the stage, took his off, and William Shatner was by himself. And we're like,
uh-oh. You can see William Shatner's done this a lot, and he's another one of those, they don't want any help. I got this, I can handle this, don't you worry, I don't need you, and that's exactly what happened with William Shatner. And this can go either one of 2 ways. Brilliantly, where William Shatner knows how to perfectly control the audience, or very chaotically in a very amusing and well-done way, and that's how it went. And I think the audience was pretty much mesmerized by what happened here, and please stay tuned. This is going to be very interesting how our William Shatner experience went here.
Wait a second, here we go, Ramses. Just put it up here. This is the entire experience in a little song and a picture.
But wait, you're fast forwarding too much. Yes, that's a nice sneak preview, Vespor. But how do I explain this?
It's about the circle of life.
Start at the beginning here. So the line formed in front of a microphone. This always happens when a guest is there. And William Shatner's going on about himself, how great he is, how he's 91 years old now. So he's saying, get my autograph because it's going to be worth something one day. He was really very endearing because as 91 years old, he was sharper than most of the 70 whatever plus actors that we saw there. Well, I think William Shatner lost his mind. It was in a different way. He was as sharp as a tack. He wasn't stumbling. He wasn't fumbling. He knew exactly what he was saying from start to finish, and it was brilliant. We have a line that's probably a mile long. We're like, oh great, he's gonna whip through all these gadgets. He's gonna have question. So he starts with the 17-year-old kid who's standing there. Like, oh, all right, we're gonna start with the kid. And he asked the weirdest question. He said, well, you mentioned you're gonna die. How do you expect to die, Bill? And Bill was like, oh, what a horrible question. Why would you ask that? How do you expect to die? He asked the kid. And the 17-year-old kid was like, oh, I probably in my sleep or at a party. And Bill ran with that. That became the whole conversation about 15 minutes about this kid dying in a party and what drugs he's gonna use. That's where this was going here. We're like, uh-oh.
Well, not necessarily uh-oh. Every good speaker needs something to break the ice, to get the crowd warmed up. I tell you what, crowd was laughing. There's tears in people's eyes. He'd done it. Everything was perfect. However, something did bother me is the fact that he just sat there and kept talking back and forth to the kid.
And going. It's like, you got the funny question, you got the laughs, let's move on, Bill. No. He kept going on to him. What drugs do you want to use? The kid's even getting like awkward now, like, I have to keep talking? All right, marijuana. And Bill's like, marijuana, that's legal, that's crazy, you can't die from that.
And he also said that's what he uses to help with his arthritis, which was hilarious.
Yeah, so it was like a comedy show. He just kept going and going until he couldn't get any more out of the kid. And he said, all right, kid, get out of here. I've had enough of you. We're like, all right, finally. And that must have been about 18 minutes had passed of talking to this kid. I'm like, wow, what a huge chunk of time he used on one kid. It was funny. It was hilarious. It had its stitches. It was very entertaining. But it would have been nice if we could have moved along faster. So contestant number 2 walks up here. He's like a middle-aged man. And he asked about the space travel. As all of you may know, William Shatner was just trying to space last year on the SpaceX, and it was a very big deal, very big news piece. So he asked him a question. He said, well, Bill, I noticed last year you were so excited about how you were into space and how this really answers everything, and now you know about religion and everything, and I have a question about that. And that brought us into a tangent that we never really got out of or recovered from that one statement. All the guy wanted to know was what was his experiences in space.
It turned into the most deep and philosophical discussion, talking about religion, God, and all the nuances of what religion and God actually means. And this dragged on because the questionnaire seemed to want to argue with William Shatner to the point that he agreed full-heartedly with him, and he wouldn't let the question drop because it looked like William Shatner multiple times was ready to move on. So we basically got this.
Now you'll see why this is very relevant, folks. So what happened is, and we touched on it a little bit, Bill went into the most in-depth, scientific, analytical history of the universe discussion I think I've ever heard at one of these panels. It's never once gotten into the creation of the universe, the Big Bang, how everything's in tune with each other, the circle of life, how we're all just microscopic, how there has to be more life in the universe than just the Earth, how we think we're so important but we really aren't, how even slime finds a way to survive, how the Grand Canyons were formed, how water will find a way, how powerful everything is, how we're all connected together. Pretty much play the game Sim Earth or Civilization. I think you get an idea of where he was going with this. From the history of time, the Big Bang, and on and on and on. I'm not making this up. He really had that discussion for about 15 to 20 minutes with this crowd.
So, with the crowd staring in disbelief that this is going on, we found out there was 10 minutes left after his 30-minute dissertation.
Yes, he finally went back to the guy and said... And this is the funniest part. What was your question again? And the guy's like, that's not even what I wanted to ask you. Finally, he got rid of him when the guy just pretty much agreed to disagree with Bill, and that was the end. That was 2 people in, and we have 10 minutes left in the whole entire 50-minute panel.
And we've not learned anything about Tech Wars, Star Trek, TJ Hooker, or any number of plethora of things he's known for. The last 10 minutes was dedicated to him telling a story of how he got to swim with sharks.
Contestant number 3, we'll call her. She was the last fan there. Let's move on to a different subject. I want to talk about the sharks. I saw you swim with sharks. That must have been so scary. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And that's what the last discussion was.
This last 10 minutes and his shark story was exactly what the rest of the panel should have been. It was to the point, fun, interactive, and made the crowd clap and cheer when it was over because this is what we came to see.
I forgot what show it was, and I'm sure you guys listen to this will know full well what show he's talking about. But yes, he got to swim with the shark. The whole story is very interesting, how he was afraid of the sharks. They lowered him down the sharks. He had to go down a certain way. He had to raise up a certain way. He almost got killed. There was a shark whisperer woman there who loved sharks and was able to roll it over and paralyze it. And it was a fun 10-minute story. Lots of fun. The crowd went wild. Yeah.
Now, this is when me and Ramses had to do something different. We had decided to pay $120 a piece to get his autograph.
Now, we had decided this before we went there. It wasn't Bill's great panel here, by the way. We decided we're going to get an autograph because we like to always do an autograph of a celebrity we love.
So we ran back into the exhibit hall. We got in line, and everybody there is a Bill Shatner fan. They're talking about all of his stuff, a lot of Star Trek. Of course, a few people there for the money, as in they want his name on something limited edition.
Yep, the pops and the figures and all that fun stuff, yeah.
Which is fine. And we get there, and then the woman in front of us is like, man, I got Jonathan Frakes' autograph. And it was like an hour and a half to get his autograph because he was talking and doing personalized messages for everybody. I'm like, yes!
I was very excited about that. You know, most people have been mowing an hour. I was like, no, this is what I wanted.
Yeah, the only other two people I've gotten autographs from is Sergeant Slaughter and Dirk Benedict. And both of them were more than willing to talk and do personalized stuff. It was wonderful. But then we noticed something was wrong. The line started to move like it was a NASCAR rally.
Yeah, it was like, on your mark, get set, go, because we were just shuffling right through. We didn't know what was going on. It was very confusing because, like, how can at a convention it be moving this fast? It didn't make any sense to us.
And then when we get there, they took a ticket where we purchased the rights to get his autograph, and then we gave them what we wanted signed, which was 2 glossies. And the guy took it quickly, then shoved it over to Will, and he's just like,
William Shatner, William Shatner,
thank
William
you.
Shatner, thank you, William Shatner, William Shatner, William Shatner, thank you. So a woman in front of me did try because she was upset also. I was upset too, I'm going to be very honest. $120, a lot of money to get William Shatner's autograph. You want to have a personalized message. You want to talk to the man. You don't want him scribbling quickly and throwing you out of there. So she tried to talk to him. And her story was interesting, and Bill couldn't really answer it. Her story was her teacher's son was named William Tiberius Kirk, and then it was his real last name. And Bill kept reading. He really wanted to talk about it. He's like, oh, poor kid, tell him to change it right away. And that was it, and that was all he could say to her, because they kept shooing pictures in front of him.
We're definitely not blaming William Shatner for this, because if you were there, he actually looked depressed that he couldn't talk to people. I mean, I'm being very serious about this.
Bill has such a big ego. You really think Bill Shatner does not want to hear how great he is from all the fans paying to get his autograph? That's a dream come true for William Shatner. Believe me, this was not William. I don't blame him at all. And if it is, please prove me wrong. Please tell me it was. His handlers there were shoving things in front of him and keeping it moving along. He had no control of it. I see exactly what happened here.
And we couldn't get our small personalized message that we got from every other person we got an autograph from.
I got this picture of him in this Admiral outfit from Star Trek 2. I wanted to say from the Admiral, Star Trek related with the Admiral written on it and his signature. That's what I wanted.
And of course, me being the silly guy, I had a picture of when he was fighting the Gorn, and I wanted him to say, keep up the good fight, and then my name.
But we didn't get that, did we? No, we just got him scribbling it. I got to say a word to him because I'm not leaving without saying something. I said, Bill, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. You don't know how much it means. And he says, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much. And that was it.
I mean, that's where you heard he was not just faking it. You actually heard the sincerity, but it is William Shatner. He is a master actor. We found out later, after we finished, he only had an hour and a half to sign like 200 autographs.
Yes, he was not there for 3 days like all the others. William Shatner is very popular, very important. They had him all over the place. So yes, he only had that very short window. Very sad. And it does hurt me a little bit because I enjoy talking to a celebrity. Sometimes you can't always get what you want with these autographs and you have to deal with it. And unfortunately, that's our experience. But I have his picture now autographed and I will frame it and I will remember it. And I'll never forget that panel with William Shatner. I can promise you that. Will you stop already, Vespor? I'm trying to be serious here. It won't be for another autograph, but hopefully we will get to see you again before you're no longer with us. Talk to you a little longer than that.
And hopefully you'll talk about Star Trek or something else other than the meaning of life.
By all means, please let us know your own William Shatner experiences. Were you able to get his autograph and were you able to talk to him at smaller conventions? Did you have just as funny moments at your panels that you saw at your conventions? Let us know because we can't be the only ones that had a crazy experience like this.
So, we haven't had lunch. Time to drown our sorrows with cheap pizza and soda from the cafeteria.
I'll be honest, we were going to do Gates McFadden at 1:45, but you know something? I think my appetite won out on hearing about the Doctor's exploits, and nothing against Gates McFadden. I love every single Star Trek Next Generation actor and actress, I just had enough after the William Shatner experience. I was like, all right, enough with the Q&As. Let's go get something to eat. I got the jet pizza combo again, and Vespor got his own thing there.
That's right. It was good food at a good price.
Let's change things up a little bit. Let's do Richard Dreyfuss. That's a very classic actor. He might have some interesting stories. I'm not expecting anything, but I was like, why not do that, Vespor? That could be fun.
After all, he was in Jaws. I was expecting a lot of Jaws talk, and there was always talk about how he was a very hard man to be around. So I didn't expect too much, but you know what? It's Richard freaking Dreyfuss. He should have some interesting stories because he's been in a ton of things.
So 2:30 into the main room, and it was already filling up. He actually got a pretty good crowd also. And then time for Richard Dreyfuss. And he's going to have a commentator helping him. A guy we call Fred. He's going to be helping Dreyfuss to run the show smoothly. And it's good he did. But it's going to be actually funny how Fred's personality changes. I'm not 100% sure what happened here, but it was a little interesting to Fred go from idolizing him to sort of just being courteous and polite to him. It was a little strange.
He gets up there, he introduces him, his bodies of work.
And he was so excited to. He was like, oh my God, you guys, this is a legend, this is the best. Fred had so much energy. It was like you would think he was introducing the Pope here. That's how excited he was. And he was listing movie after movie after movie after movie. It was really exciting.
And so he comes up and introduces him and asks a few warm-up questions.
And he starts with some minor movies, lesser known movies. And they do that a lot, so because they know all the questions about the major movies.
It also makes for a good conversation piece because this usually leads into other things. Very interesting conversations pursue. And then finally, Fred gets into what he's been doing lately. And then once Richard Dreyfuss explains in great detail what he's been into lately, that's when the mood of the moderator changed greatly.
Yes, and again, we don't do anything too deep here. We're a retro channel, we have fun, and we're going to keep it light and to fun. But he was talking about a book he wrote, and I can give you the title of the book because it's a book. The book he wrote is One Thought Scares Me. We teach our children what we wish them to know. We don't teach our children what we don't wish them to know. Written by Richard Dreyfuss, October 18, 2022. There you go. That's what he's been here to promote, and that's what the main subject of what he goes on for about 10 minutes now is about. And it's pretty much about that we don't teach civics anymore and how important it is to learn civics. And he went on for about 10 minutes. The crowd was into it. Some did get up and leave because, you know, not everyone wants deep subject. I'm fully appreciative of that. Not everyone has to have a deep subject in their panels here, but some did get up. But most of them were nodding, clapping, and appreciated what Mr. Dreyfuss had to say about his book here.
Well, let me put it to you this way. After he explained this book and his thoughts on it, crowd was going crazy. And he even admitted himself that he's starting to change and becoming a better person. And you can see he didn't start changing until 3 years ago, he said.
So very interesting. I didn't know he wrote this book. I didn't know he believed this stuff. The moderator, who we call Fred, his mood did change after Mr. Dreyfuss talked about this book for about 10 minutes.
That didn't stop the crowd because after that, he got question after question about his movies, what he's been doing. He answered them with enthusiasm. He made the crowd laugh. He laughed himself. He had excellent engagement. These questions were short and to the point, but still good. It had a good moral and theme behind it. And it was everything that we wanted William Shatner's panel to be was.
Short, concise, informative, asking whatever question they asked to the fullest. So if they asked him a question out of his book, he answered the question out of the book. He was not holding back on any details. It was the most informative panel I think I've ever been to. It was so interesting. He had such passion and heart about it. He was answering every question no matter what it was, whether it was about his book, whether it was about his movies, whether it was about acting, whether it was about his feelings, his family. Everything you can think of, this man was answering to its fullest. We got through the whole line, and Richard Dreyfuss made sure to answer every question out there to its full. It was wonderful.
By far and away, Richard Dreyfuss stole William Shatner's thunder.
A lot of them were phony. Richard Dreyfuss was the exact opposite of what a phony is. The most honest and sincere person in the whole entire place this weekend.
So we leave out there with our jaws down to our knees, and with a deep respect for Richard Dreyfuss that we never had before, we decided to talk about Richard Dreyfuss and go shopping again in the exhibit area because we still had not completed viewing all the shopping area.
You can't get through all these vendors in one outing. It is gigantic, and you keep finding more things, and you keep learning more things, and you keep exploring more things. You get deeper and deeper into this never-ending web of vendors and people, and everyone's overly friendly and kind. There wasn't a mean person in the whole entire place.
Yep, just basically think of this vendor hall as Etsy come to life.
So yes, we did that for another hour at least, until finally we realized, oh wait, there's other things to do here besides look at vendors. We didn't buy a lot, by the way. We bought like maybe a few things each, 3 things each, so we weren't going crazy. But you just get so lost in all the stuff that you can find here. It itself is entertainment in itself.
Absolutely. Artist Alley was absolutely amazing, and they love to talk about their work.
And I'm sure you guys have your own stories of how you have intentions to do all the shows, but then the vendors win out in the end of the day. But it's 4:30, And I'm like, Vespor, we have a show to do. We got to do something else before we leave here. And we come to see that Steve Whitmore, who we saw yesterday to the actual viewing of Muppet Christmas Carol, is going to do a panel next. We're like, oh, that'd be great. We went right to the super stage to see him. Steve Whitmore, the man behind Kermit, Ernie, Beaker, Rizzo, all your favorite Muppets. Here he is, the guy that took over for Jim Henson. Oh boy. He has a moderator, and it's the guy we call Joe Jr. And this guy's a little different than Fred because he doesn't have the energy, but he does have the interest and passion and interview skills. So it's a little different how he goes about it. Line's already forming, so it's another one of those rooms that has a line, but the microphone doesn't work, which is the funny part of all this. 20 people standing in front of a microphone that doesn't even work to ask questions.
But here's the thing. We definitely want to moderate. However, this is where we learned something about Joe Jr. He didn't want to let anybody ask questions until he'd gone through every single point he wanted to make with Steve Whitmore.
Oh yeah, and Vestor's not kidding. He had a list a mile long, and he was going to ask every single question, and he wasn't even apologetic about it. He said, you don't know how big a deal this is to me. I am your biggest fan. I grew up listening to you. You don't understand. I'm gushing. This is over and over again. He wasn't apologetic about it. He was going on and on about how big a fan he was. It was like he was doing a personal interview with him while you still have a line of fans waiting to ask questions, and they were getting annoyed. They were like, ugh, what's going on here? He wouldn't shut up. Me and Vest were like, is this guy ever going to let a fan ask a question here? What is going on?
Exactly. And it was absolutely ridiculous, almost cringy at times, because this guy was hero worshiping, and it's true that we're there to hero worship ourselves, at least to a little extent. You gotta give us time to do it because we can't do it otherwise. There's no other panel to do this in.
I'm not penalizing Whitmore because he really did answer everything to its fullest. He explained how the Kermit puppet was created. He explained how hard it was to work the puppets. He explained how he did voices. It took 5 years of training to get good enough to be Jim Henson's understudy. And he talked about the relationships he had with other people and how you have to treat the Muppets a certain way. And then he asked a lot of ridiculous questions about the newer Muppets. The guy's very clearly younger than the rest of myself, so he was asking about shows we didn't really watch, like Muppets Tonight and the new stuff that ABC tried to do. That all didn't do well, the new movies. So he was really focused on that. But Whitmire was that was the fringes of him because he was on his way out at that time.
And he was totally unapologetic when he said, I didn't watch that.
Right. He was like, nope, not my Muppets. I didn't watch it. Nope, not my Muppets. And the guy was like, oh. He was expecting someone who's no longer with the company to still be focused on what they're doing. It's like, why? Do you watch something from your former place that you worked at? I was ready to ask. Do you focus on places that you don't work anymore and see what they're doing? No, you move on with your life to something else.
Especially when they disrespect you and then dismiss you.
Whitmore didn't go there. Wonderful guy. I think he handled the whole situation very well. But the clock's ticking away. He's answering great questions, by the way. I want this understood that it was a wonderful, knowledgeable experience. I really learned a lot about him. I mean, you name it, Joe Jr. went there and he answered it, and that was great. But me and Vester are looking at the clock, ticking, ticking, ticking. So it's 5:35 now, and I'm looking at Vester like, is he ever going to let the fans say something? And you see they're all like folding their arms, they're fuming, they've been standing there for over a half hour, and he very clearly knows they're standing there, and he's like, I'm sorry, guys. Oh, I'm such a fan. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gushing here. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, we're going to get to your questions soon. Please, I just have one more. So he asked another question that took 5 minutes. Finally, he finished. He's like, all right, that's all I got here. Now let's get to you guys. I'm sorry, we'll get to all you. I'm very sorry. We'll do lightning round if we leave any out.
And that's what we got. We got basically 3 to 4 full questions, and then the last 6 people got the lightning round.
What's the lightning round? That's where you get to ask your question very quickly, and Steve will say yes or no pretty much to the question you asked him.
And it was actually very insulting to the fans there because the moderator took all of his time, and we were denied as fans by the moderator, which we're not taking and marking Steve down for this in our review. We're giving a thumbs down to Joe Jr. Go and learn from your dad.
Yeah, exactly. Very bad, Joe Jr. I don't mind you talking a little bit to him, but give fans at least a half hour to talk to someone we're here to see. The best voice of Kermit, of course, after Jim Henson to ever exist. New guy can't hold a jockstrap to Steve Whitmire. And yeah, you can be upset with me, moderator, if you're listening to it, but you were wrong. All right? And you know, Ramsis here, I'm very honest. You were wrong. You don't do something like that. That was obnoxious. It was rude. And I'm going to give you a 0, but not you, Whitmire. You were great. Hopefully, we'll get to see you again in the future without an annoying moderator monopolizing all your time.
Now that we finished with Steve Whitmore, we had been at the con for, about 8 hours now, and we were exhausted. We decided to leave, which didn't take nearly as long to leave as it did to get in, and we got some food unlike the previous night, and was actually able to relax and watch some classic Price is Right before going to bed.
Pluto, Roku channel, Price is Right with Bob Barker channel. Don't Say Ramses never hooked you up with something great. We watched that the rest of the night. Here we are. That was the end of our wonderful Saturday at the convention. So here we are now, our third and final day of the GalaxyCon in Columbus, December 4th. Not as long as the other 2 days, not as crowded as Saturday, that's for sure, but still another action-packed day, and it was a great way to end our event here.
And boy, are we both exhausted. So we head on out from our hotel, and ironically, we get the exact same parking spot we got on the first day.
Wow, it must have been a sign. We were meant to be there. Great, we parked right there. We were pretty much right on time. It was not as crowded as yesterday, as I mentioned, so we were able to sneak right in there. We arrived at about 10:45, I want to say. And the first event we were interested in was at 11 o'clock. You know, I've heard so many good things about her. Whenever she does a convention, it's always energetic. It's always really in your face. I knew with Terry Farrell, we were going to get the facts and just the facts with her. And that's what they call her panel, by the way. Just the facts with Dax. Because yes, this is the Jadzia Dax actress from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, otherwise known as Terry Farrell. Oh boy, that's exciting. And it was taking place in the Super Stage, the smaller one. But still, I know she's going to get a good crowd. This is going to be good. So now we all sit in the room. We're waiting. We're about 5 minutes to go. And a moderator we never saw before walked in. We're like, oh, another guy. We need a new name for him. So he looked like a Samuel to us. So we'll call him Sam. And if anyone wants to fill in the names of these guys, please do. We're just using names so that we can reference who these guys are. They didn't say, hi, I'm welcome to it. But none of these commentators said their names, so we have no idea who they are. We'll call him Sam. Very different guy, but this is going to be interesting. So at 11:01, Terry Farrell walks on. She's excited. She's waving. The crowd is going bananas. They were very excited to see her.
Yeah, unlike all the other ones, except for maybe Will Shatner and Jodie Whittaker, none of the actors got a standing ovation like she did. They were excited to see her. I'm like, wow, she must have some rabid fans.
Now, the moderator was kind of funny because he knew what we wanted to talk about. We're all there for Deep Space Nine, but now comes the ego-boosting portion of every panel, because I think all the moderators do the same thing. They're going to talk about their lesser-known series and movies to boost the actress a little, or actor a little bit, to show that they did do other things. Yes, Star Trek Deep Space Nine is what we know her for, but she was in plenty of other things, like Becker and Paper Dolls and a lot of other projects that she did. And she talked about those for about 5 minutes each. And the crowd kept laughing because it's like, all right, now we're going to talk about... And he kept making us believe he was going to talk about Deep Space Nine. But he got 3 other projects that she did. And she was very appreciative of that. She talked about her relationship with Ted Danson. She talked about Paper Dolls. She talked about, you know, what it was like being on the sets of those. Very proud to do so. And it was actually very interesting. So good stuff. We weren't upset about that.
And this is where we learned that the cousin of the Super Friend from the Lexington Comic and Toy Convention was also at this panel.
And you're probably like, what does Vespor mean by that? Well, we had a very energetic fan, and I have no problem with energetic fans because I love fans that really enjoy what they enjoy about celebrities. I think it's wonderful. That's what it's all about. Don't forget the word fan is short for fanatic, and this guy pretty much fit that definition very well. Every time Terry Farrell said something positive, her super fan would yell out, "That's right!" or "Yeah, you're the best!" And she was blushing, and it was awkward, and it was weird, but he wouldn't stop. For the whole entire time, her biggest fan, or her relative, or whoever you want to call it, was boosting her ego every time.
And they even make jokes about this guy, by the way.
Yes, saying, "Oh, it's a good thing I have my relatives here. Oh, you like that? Or, oh, yeah, I should have you as my agent." You know, things like that. But he wouldn't shut up. And it didn't ruin it because we're used to that. We had that at the Power Rangers panels in previous conventions. We've had that many times happen where a super fan just gets too excited and think they're the only one there. That's fine. We dealt with it. Not a big deal, but it added some variety and flavor to this whole panel.
After dealing with him, she finally got to talk about how she was interviewed for Deep Space Nine. Didn't have much time at this point, but the thing that bothered me the most, it had been over 30 minutes and didn't look like there was going to be any questions whatsoever, even though there was a line for questions. I want to point this out.
Yeah, there was definitely a line forming. There was about 15, maybe 10 fans there. This was another one of those where the moderator was going to monopolize it, but this time I think it was on purpose because we forgot to mention there was actually a second person on stage with her, a Star Trek expert who seems to do all the books and the manuscripts and things like that. Terry Farrell was very familiar with, so I think she worked with him before and many times, and he was there to sort of be like an extra person. So this was going to be done more like a radio interview, and I think Terry Farrell wanted it that way. She was trying to control the interview a little bit so that only the moderator and this Star Trek expert guy who did absolutely nothing but laugh and make bad uncle jokes the whole time was there just to sort of reel in the discussion a little bit.
And I do want to add, he literally did not talk about anything. Only thing he did was every now and then correct a name for some producer or director that she worked with that she couldn't remember the entire name of. Whenever the interviewing ended and it was time to leave and the line of people looked absolutely disgusted at the fact they couldn't ask a question, that's when we were almost 100% certain that this was meant to be a straight up interview process because there's been some controversy as to why she left Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
You're watching us on a social media site, so please be sure to check out all the various panels where she talks about why she left. It was more in-depth in other panels where the fans clearly asked you, why did you leave before season 7 of Deep Space Nine? Different reasons. Most of it's about money. One side says she wanted more money, another side says she was disrespected and was promised something and wasn't getting it, and another is like she felt that it was time to move on and she wanted to go to another show, and it was just every reason you could think of. Now this time, she sort of was leading it because again, she wasn't taking questions, but she sort of wanted to throw it out there, and it changed. And again, we're not going to get too deep in what she said because it was a little controversial, but it's pretty much that Rick Berman, who was in charge of Star Trek at the time, wanted her to over-sexualize herself, and that really upset her. And she had had enough of this by the time the show was over, and she wanted no more, and she decided that was it. That was the reason this time, because she felt she was being abused by the executive producer, Rick Berman, at the time. She wanted out, and that's the new reason, I guess, we got for this convention.
All that aside, she was very energetic, very fun, and I would recommend going to listen to her talk about her experiences, because besides that, I truly believe what she said was the facts.
But I will say she cursed way too much. You know, here on Ves's Retro Review, we do run a clean show. We try to do a PG-13 fun show. We don't resort to cursing. We don't resort to potty humor or easy outs like that. We just try to have fun, a good time, with friends hanging out. Every question, she must have done it. A question was asked, and she would maybe once during that entire question, she would throw out a curse. And there was kids there. I don't think it was very appropriate, and she was doing it a little too much for my taste. I don't mind some cursing. Some of the panelists did it many times, but when you're doing it for reaction, then you're just not giving the proper respect to the fans.
I mean, she could be playing the crowd. She is an actress after all. Only 2 other panelists had cussed, and it was usually just a slip of the tongue, and you could tell it was just a slip of the tongue.
Right. If it was said at all by another panelist, it was one time and that was it. So very strange, but I will say my opinions here. I like her. I thought she was very honest. I like where she went with things. She wasn't afraid to say how she felt. She was really very opinionated on everything. She went into the details of Star Trek. She went into how it was working with her co-workers. So you learned a lot here. I am disappointed that she wouldn't let others have a question. I think you are sort of limiting things. When you go to convention, this is for the fans. Let them have a few questions here. Even if it's like Will Shatner who only let 3, at least let 3 questions in. I mean, at least he let 3 questions in. She didn't do that, so I'm a little disappointed in that. But she was entertaining. She was very funny, very informative, very honest in what she really believed. And I'm glad we saw her.
So after the line of people left in disgust and the fact they couldn't ask her any questions, we decided it was time to get some food. And we decided to walk about half a mile from the convention center to eat at this nice little place right here.
Boston Pizza, and they are a franchise, and I've had them before, so I was very familiar with them. I said, oh, we gotta try Boston Pizza. I haven't had them in so long, I can't even remember the last time I actually ate them. So when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's perfect. Now, it should be noted that this was right across the street from the Columbus Blue Jacket hockey arena. So we were like smack downtown, right where the hockey team plays.
Yeah, when I was there, I just got myself this pizza hamburger thing, which was an amazing thing. They wrapped basically a pizza crust around a hamburger with marinara sauce, pepperoni, and it was absolutely amazing.
And I just got the usual pizza and a little side. It was a lot of fun. It was really good. Overpriced, but everything in these franchise places is now delicious, just what we needed. Again, hit the spot. Because don't forget, we started a little late this day. We started at around 11, so now we're already at noon, so here we are. So we're like, all right, this day's moving along. Now, I want to note, Sunday's going to be a shorter day because this is the last day. This is the wrap-up day. They still have stuff going on, but you can see that it's not going to be as much.
So we marched back through the cold with full stomachs to the convention center. And we went to go see our next panelist, which was Vincent D'Onofrio. And he's been in Full Metal Jacket, Men in Black, Daredevil, a very well-known guy, and apparently a very good A-lister that we weren't that familiar with because, well, in all honesty, the way he looked now is not how he looked back then. And you would never realized he was the bug from the Men in Black.
No, that was
or that he was actually the guy that killed himself in Full Metal Jacket.
We had no idea who the guy was, so we're like, oh, who wants to see this guy? We have another favorite of Vesper's Retro Reviews going on at the same exact time. So at 1:30, we also had Jim Shooter. And you're like, oh, Jim Shooter, that's right. Jim Shooter, the former head of Marvel Comics, speaking at the same time. But you guys know we've already done 2 Jim Shooter panels. We could have even done 3 at the last one because they threw Jim Shooter so much. We're like, do we want to keep doing Jim Shooter, or should we do this hulking bull guy who looks so interesting? I gotta learn what this guy did. Hulking bull guy won because, like Vesper said, he did all those movies. We had to find out more about this guy. And I think we made the right decision. Not what I expected, because the guy guy was a little more reserved, but it was very interesting. We learned a lot from this guy, and he had some very interesting stories.
He was absolutely amazing. The only thing that I would complain about is the fact that his energy levels weren't nearly there as some of the other guests. And it was sort of soft-spoken like John Delancey, but unlike John Delancey, he was actually getting into it. He just looked like he had no energy, like he literally just flew in that morning and was out of energy, although he'd been there since yesterday. But he gave very informative answers to all the questions. He had Fred as the moderator, and he did an excellent job of only doing it for another 15 minutes and passing it on to the fans. And he actually stood there again to help facilitate the questioning, because I do believe a lot of people complained about what happened with Shatner. I really do.
I have to believe it, because the guy we call Fred here, he really changed his ways. It was like, finally, they're really doing things the right way. So it took him 3 days, and you have to remember there's a new convention owned by GalaxyCon here. GalaxyCon's been around for a while, but this is the first time they're running the Columbus version of it. And the third day, they got it all right. He was standing in the audience, he was holding a microphone, he was keeping them to one question, he was saying thank you very much, let's move along to the next one. And you know something, it was great because Vincent was really feeding off of this. They asked amazing questions about Men in Black. Remember Vespor mentioned Men in Black? How did he learn to act like a bug? And this was a very, very interesting answer that he gave. He said, do you guys want to hear the real answer or do you want the short version? Crowd yelled, the real long answer. And he's like, all right guys, you asked for it. And he didn't disappoint. He went from start to finish of how he learned to be a bug and what the part meant and how he was going to do this part and his discussions with the director and the director understanding what he was doing. The whole long discussion, he definitely is on the top of the list of very interesting behind the scenes stories. And all the questions were great. People asked about what's your favorite part, what'd you like, and this Daredevil question, because now he's very heavily involved in the revival of Daredevil. He's Kingpin in any other movie that he appears in, and he's very happy about that. He loves it. Law and Order, Stanley Kubrick, and that was a very big deal of conversation. Very interesting stuff, actually.
Yeah, and in all honesty, he was so informational. He had so much fun stories that my brain was getting garbled and I couldn't remember it all, but those were the highlights Ramsey said because those were the most interesting stories. And you know what? He was worth it. He was on the main stage and it was pretty packed.
Yeah, he didn't have as big as some of the big A-listers, but he deserved it. He was really in a lot of movies you don't even realize this guy was in as the big thug, and he's happy to play a character actor. He made that very clear.
So, abusing the rules of GalaxyCon and being able to get the seats we want after everybody does their selfie and those that want to stay for the next panelist leaves, we moved closer and we got to listen to Jonathan Frakes, Will Riker himself.
Oh boy, and I wasn't excited because, you know, it's usually more exciting when he's with others. When he has Brett Spiner or he has LeVar Burton and he has Michael Jordan, it's very exciting because they all play off each other. When it's just him, I sort of know what you're going to get. And you have to remember, Jonathan Frakes is now very heavily engrossed in the current Paramount versions of Star Trek under Alec Kurtzman. So you have to be careful what you say now. In Hollywood, you gotta word things properly. So I knew it was what we were gonna get. I was not surprised. Vester was a little surprised, but I wasn't, and he didn't disappoint because he gave exactly what I expected to get.
What that was a nice heartfelt interview with some sincere questions, a lot of plugging of his current media, which is highly unsuccessful, and playing the Hollywood game of putting down certain things and bringing up aspects that would be considered controversial.
Yes, again, we're not political, we're not gonna go into it. If you want to watch the interview, by all means do. I'm sure it'll be posted somewhere. It was like that, and I'm not upset that it was. I'm more upset in Jonathan Frakes for being a little bit of a phony because he gave sort of two-sided answers sometimes. He would say, well, I don't see why anyone would want to pay for any of these streaming services, and then he goes to plug shows that are only found on the streaming service. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of a double message there. You're like, don't do streaming services, but be sure to watch my new Star Trek on one of the streaming services.
Don't forget this one, how he talked about how Star Trek Insurrection was this surefire hit, had everything going for it, perfect story, perfect actors, and then about 5 minutes later puts it down as one of the worst things ever done by saying he was in director hell because of this movie.
Yes, one of the worst movies ever made after he was waxing poetic about how great a movie was. And it's no secret, and you guys can bash it all you want, I will die on that sword. Star Trek Insurrection is one of the worst Star Trek. I don't like it, I hate it. And Jonathan Frakes was on both sides of the fence. He hated it, he loved it, he loved it, he hated it. And this conversation came up because they were talking about why did you shave the beard for Insurrection? And that's when Jonathan Frakes went into, well, I should have known better because the beard is like a magic power, and when you get rid of the beard, things go wrong, as we learned on Star Trek Next Generation, the TV show, because when I had the beard, everything went right. When I didn't have the beard, everything went wrong. And there you go, that was his funny little story. He was making little snide comments like that. It was very weird, because a lot of the times he was shilling and pushing his new projects with Paramount which is okay. I don't mind a celebrity pushing their current projects, but it was so weird and inserted, and it was kind of like, is that what you're here for really? Or do you really want to talk to fans, or do you want to make sure that you keep plugging the new stuff you're involved with? The way John was doing it, it was kind of like he was sort of being told what to say and how to say it and the correct way to properly say things. It was getting a lot of weird reactions from the audience. I don't know if it was playing well with the Columbus audience as he thought it might.
But the thing was, he was very energetic, unlike the previous speaker, but it was a two-faced thing that you eventually just caught on to. I was hoping we'd get a very fun interview, and instead we got him speaking out both sides of his mouth at the same time, and it was not as enjoyable as I was hoping, to the point that I was severely let down.
It was just all over the place. It was very strange, and you could see times he wanted to be himself and funny, like he would tell a funny story of when the first time he realized he was a celebrity was when he was going to the bathroom at a baseball park, and he turned, and the fan turned around, and you can figure out what happened there.
He peed down his leg.
There you go. Funny story like that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that was hilarious. I had the place in stitches. And then he would go back to a plug for one of the new Star Treks that only some of the people heard of, and it was a little strange. So it seemed like he had two missions there. One to make you laugh, which he did, but another mission to keep plugging the new stuff, and making sure to check all boxes so that he had like a preset speech or something that he was going to say. It was very strange. It seemed like it was all pre-planned on certain things he was going to say. And I don't mind him. He's a businessman, and all the power to him. I always want people to make as much money as they can in this world. Came off a little, like Vespor said, two-faced and phony, and it's disappointing because Jonathan Frakes is one of the best presenters of all the Star Trek celebrities. It's very well known. Great speaker, very comedic, very entertaining. He didn't come off this way. It sounded like he was just here sort of to plug some stuff and move on his way, and that was disappointing. I wanted a little better than that.
Every other panelist was still at least sincere about it and didn't hide the fact. It felt like Jonathan Frakes was hiding things from us, and it did not feel good. And like Ramses, I still love Jonathan Frakes as Riker. He did an excellent job. He's doing his best, but something was definitely going on here, and it took away a lot of the enjoyment because of the way he behaved during this panel.
What I learned, I'm glad I learned. The other stuff I could have done without, but that's life. Sometimes you don't always get everything, but you take what you get and you enjoy it and you make something out of it. And that's what we're going to do here. So, you know what I'm saying? That was really it.
We were exhausted. We'd done more things at this con than we'd ever done at any other con before this. And so I decided that we needed to do one last little walk around the exhibit hall because I needed to wake up before our nice drive back home.
We took one final look and said, wow, this was a lot of fun. We didn't regret anything. We had fun with everybody. Even the band panels were great. The vendors were great. The rooms were great. The setup was great. The organization was great. We had a lot of fun. We did one final 15-minute walkthrough. We said, Vespor, let's get on out of here. And that's exactly what we did. We headed on out and we headed home, and that was
No, Ramsey. To boldly go where we have been before. Home trek.
So that was it. That was our 3-day experience with the convention. Now, of course, stay tuned as we're going to give our final thoughts, and we're also going to rank every single panel. We do this every single time we do a convention, so stay tuned for that right now. And now for your favorite part of our convention reviews. That's right, we're going to rank from our least favorite to our favorite panels that we saw during the GalaxyCon Columbus 2022 convention in Columbus, Ohio. We're going to rank them from our least favorite in ascending order all the way to the top of the line, the best of the best, the one that we thought was the greatest panel that we saw. And this is out of a total of 10 panels that we saw together. There was a lot more than 10, believe me. Out of the 10 that we specifically saw, either in part or in completion, we're going to now rank them from least favorite to our most favorite. So buckle in, stay tuned. It's what you guys are always looking forward to, and here it is.
Now, we're going to clarify some things before we go into our ranks to help you understand how we did it. So, our first thing that we're judging is enthusiasm. How happy they are to be there and how excited they are to interact with the crowd. The second one was knowledge. How much they were willing to share about their experiences. And our third criteria was how willing they were to interact with the audience. This could be done in the amount of questions that were asked or the depth of question they were willing to answer.
Since we had so many to choose from here, this is going to be an interesting list. Here we go. At our number 10 selection, we have
John Glover, the voice actor for the Riddler and star of many plays and movies. Now, he was definitely the worst panelist we saw, not because he lacked enthusiasm, but because he lacked knowledge. Every answer you asked him was like, well, I don't know, or you should see this, deflecting questions. He was not a very good panelist to see.
Originally, he was going to go up against Brent Spiner. Brent Spiner canceled due to sickness in the family. So he was going solo here, so this was his big shot, his big break to get a big crowd crowd really won him over, and he failed miserably. This was such a letdown, very boring. I learned absolutely nothing except that this guy doesn't remember where he is and doesn't remember what he did and had no passion at all in what he did. It was a paycheck, and he moved on with his life. I mean, that's really all I learned from him. Very disappointing.
Don't forget, we also learned we need to watch 52 Pickup.
It gets much better from here, so that's the bottom of the bottom, the worst of the worst. Maybe there was worse, but we didn't do all the panels here, as we mentioned. So now let's move on to our number 9 selection, which is
John Delancey. Now, you may be asking, why is John Delancey in our number 9 position? Well, that's because John Delancey's enthusiasm was absolutely in the basement. His knowledge was actually quite high. He didn't necessarily deflect, but he was very evasive about how he answered things. I was heartbroken because I've seen the panels he's been on. I've seen him even talk about his time as Discord, and he was smiling and laughing, and he pulled the audience in. This man is much better than what he showed on Friday at the convention.
He might have had a bad day, and we've seen panelists before who had bad days. And yes, unfortunately, it is what it is. You're only going to be ranked on what we experienced. And we experienced someone with low energy, low passion, low desire. He told the Discord story, and he seemed to like sigh as he was telling it. He said it in a very monotone voice, and it was kind of like matter-of-factly. Anyone trying to praise him, he didn't want to hear it. Anyone trying to say what was your favorite, he didn't want to say. He didn't even have a moderator helping him, and he definitely needed one this go around. Very disappointing. I like John Delancey, but this version of John Delancey I didn't like, and he must have had a bad day, but oh well, that's how it goes. So our number 8 selection for the 10 panels we saw is
Jonathan Frakes, also known as Riker from Star Trek Next Generation. He had a lot more enthusiasm. He also enjoyed talking to the crowd, but that's where things got a little weird with him because he would say one thing and then contradict himself a second later, making me feel very insincere. While he was fun to listen to, you weren't certain if he was actually telling the truth. He'd also, at odd times, really just delve into some controversial political statements that made the crowd uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was very strange. You know, I sort of knew going in this is how it's going to be. We know the world we live in now, and unfortunately, this is a big subject in any public figure is doing speaking. You have to show what side you're on. You got to put a little jabs in here and there. No matter what side you're on, you're going to jab the other side. And Jonathan Frakes was not afraid to do that. We're in the central Ohio here. It's a very bellwether state. It's very middle of the road. Don't bring out your politics games and your political views. No one wants to hear it, and the crowd definitely didn't want to hear it.
Especially when you're at a convention. We're here to forget reality. We want to enjoy all the good things that make us smile, not be polarized one way or the other.
And again, we're not political here, and I'm not taking one side or the other. I don't even get involved with any politics. We're just a retro show. That's all we do here.
We like to think ourselves apolitical.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also was doing a lot of shilling. And again, I don't mind because a lot of the people that ranked a lot higher than him were shilling nonstop. But he was doing it very tastelessly, where he would just keep throwing in plugs for the new Paramount-based Star Trek stuff, which is fine. Of course you should plug it, but he kept going and going and going with it. Let's hear some stories about on the set. Let's hear some stories about Riker. No, it was plug time, plug time, plug time. I'm going to keep on pushing it. Oh, by the way, I'm directing it. Oh, by the way, it's the greatest cast ever. Oh, by the way, you got to subscribe to it. Oh, by the way, oh, by the way. When he did talk about the history, when he did talk about funny, non-related to Paramount stories, it was great. But he didn't do that enough, and it kept him low. The energy wanted to be there from the crowd, and we cheered when he gave us something, but it was so few and far between that unfortunately, yes, he's going to rank at a very disappointing 8, and hopefully he does better next time. So now our next one's an interesting one because our number 7 rank is
Jodie Whittaker. Now you may be surprised. If you've noticed anything about our panels, almost every single one of them has been retro, has dealt a lot in 70s, 80s, 90s, or early 2000s. But we were led in to see Jodie Whittaker by mistake when we were trying to see William Shatner. So we got to experience most of her panels, strangely enough. And due to that, we feel that we could actually give her a rating on this list. I wasn't necessarily interested in what she had to say. What she did say, and the emotions and interaction with the audience, put everybody else below her to shame. She was not fake. She truly believed what she said, and she got them absolutely engaged. Why she didn't rate higher? It was all about Jodie Whittaker.
I think I'm a terrible person to rank this. I've seen one episode in the history of the Doctor Who TV series, and one day maybe I'll tell you guys that's a fun story. The one episode I saw, I'll save that for a fun little story in the future.
He saw one of the worst episodes ever.
That's the only clue you're gonna get. So I had no idea what she was talking about. I had no idea what's going on. I had no idea what was so special about her being this character of Doctor Who, so I didn't even know what was going on. like Vespor said, she had such passion and such energy and such, wow, she was so excited to be here. But then it was always about, yay, I'm great, or yes, I did it. I was like, what is all this self-praising stuff? I didn't understand it. So I don't know. I guess I'm out of the loop with this stuff. Again, I'm a retro fan. I don't keep up with the current stuff. I had no idea what's going on. It didn't do it for me, but I loved the energy. She was not afraid to talk about anything, and I appreciate that. But to me, it was all, I had no idea what was going on, so I can't really rank it higher than this, because to me, it didn't mean anything.
We got to move on. So what's next, Ramsey?
So next in the number 6 slot is James Arnold Taylor. And that's an interesting one because he's a jack of all trades type voice actor, and he brought on his own little gimmicks and his own little show, and he kept it interesting. I didn't have too many connection with the characters he did. He did characters like Titus from Final Fantasy X. I wasn't a big fan of that. He did Johnny Test. I barely watched that cartoon. That was a little after my time. So he did a lot of characters that I wasn't familiar with, but I liked what he did. He was doing character voices. He was having fun. He was just glad to be there. He was talking about his history. He talked about how he got into the business. So yeah, I give him props. It was very interesting. He didn't do a lot of characters that I related to, but I appreciate the show he brought to us for 50 minutes. I thought he did a great job.
Yes, and like Jodie Whittaker, he was very proud of what he did. But unlike Jodie Whittaker, he came off in a humble way, describing where he started, how he did it, and how he got his lucky breaks and was able to get his foot in the door to become a very successful voice actor. And to me, I absolutely loved it. He even had a show. It was absolutely amazing. However, enthusiasm and knowledge can only go so far. He was a little too caught up on himself, and the questioning portion suffered, so he couldn't necessarily rate higher than 6th place. But let me tell you something. There's not that big of a difference between 7th and 6th place on this list. Ramses, why don't you tell us who our 5th place panelist is?
Moving into number 5, we're getting near the halfway point here. We have Terry Farrell, and she, of course, was the actress best known as Dax on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I am a fan. I'm going to be very honest. I am a Dax fan. I'm a Terry Farrell fan. I like her. I like her as an actress. I like her as a person. I like her characters. I think she's a great actress, and I think she's a real spitfire, and I think she's needed, and I think it's wonderful whenever she's inserted to a show. But she only got midway here because I think it was a little disappointing what we actually got. She was very, very protective of what she wanted to talk about. She talked, believe me, that's why she's halfway already. But it was through the crutches of having 2, not just 1, but 2 moderators there to help lead her on, and she barely talked to the crowd at all, if at all. It was a lot of fun. She told it all, but it wasn't exactly her best showing. It was very good, but not her best outing here. It could have been a little better.
Yes, I totally agree. She was very interactive. She was humble. She talked about herself, but she also had other stories that praised other people around her, and it was very fun and humbling at some points. But later on into the interview, when you saw she was not going to take questions, even though there was a line, things didn't get quite as enjoyable, because it felt like, to me, she was avoiding answering questions because she is kind of a controversial topic due to her own actions, not necessarily about what happened to her. And the reason she didn't rate higher is because she didn't answer questions. So now, moving on to number 4 is Steve Whitmore, the voice of Kermit after Jim Henson died for more than 30 years. He's very well spoken, and we got to see him at the Muppets Christmas Carol, and the way he acted there was no different than how he acted in front of an audience in an interview. He was a little hoarse because he stood up and partied after the Christmas Carol, but we didn't care about that because he was so willing to talk to people. The big downside to this entire interview process was because of Joe Jr. Now, Ramses, would you like to elaborate on what I just said?
I definitely will. You know me, I don't hold back any punches. Joe Jr., as we call the commentator here, he pretty much was idolizing Steve Whitmore the ground he walked on. He pretty much was monopolizing the whole entire interview and wasn't ashamed that he was doing so. When you have a line forming of all these fans that wanted to ask questions, but the moderator would not let it happen because he's busy having his own personal dreams that he's reliving. So he asked question after question, and the reason why he's actually 4th place here is the answers were brilliant. He really answered these questions with such information. It was very impressive. I learned a lot of history. I learned a lot behind the scenes. I learned a lot about him getting into the business and what it was all about. So that was great. But I don't want to hear it from Joe Jr. I want to hear it from the fans asking questions. Who cares what Joe Jr. has to say? I'm not there to learn about Joe Jr.'s love of Kermit the Frog growing up. And not to mention, Joe Jr. liked the later stuff, which me and Vespor weren't into anyway. He liked the current movies and the TV show that bombed from a few years ago. Who cares? We want to talk about the retro stuff. How about the Muppet movie? How about Muppet Take Manhattan? How about anything that any of the fans here were interested in? Very disappointing, and I am going to actually contact GalaxyCon about some of the problems that the moderators had monopolizing some of these panels. It wasn't right. When you have fans waiting there to talk to their favorite celebrities, let them do so. That's what we paid the money to go in here. Let us do the talking and you moderate and control the situation.
Shout out to Joe from Lexington and the Huntington Comic and Toy Conventions. You do it right, bro. We didn't realize how good you are until we went to this con.
Absolutely.
Now, we're going to move on to the top 3. And we're going to start with the bronze medal of number 3 with William Shatner. While he was fairly knowledgeable and while he did interact with fans very much so, and his enthusiasm was through the roof, the problem was that without a moderator there, he just drifted and went where he wanted. Sort of like your older father in his later years wanting to tell you that he went to school up ways both hill in the snow. And while we listened to it all with bated breath and on the edge of our seats, it was actually very disappointing. William Shatner does not back down, and he is not afraid to take any question, no matter how long it may take for him to answer it.
You could sit there all day and listen to the man and never grow tired. He's 91 years old, which is amazing in itself. I still can't believe William Shatner is 91 years old. He was as sharp as a tack. You would not know this man is over 60 years old. He was talking about the history of the universe and nature and everything else you could think of. He was going on religion and he was going on memories and thoughts and joking. He was making the crowd laugh, hysterics. Yes, he did not really talk about Star Trek or any other project that he is well known for. It was still amazing. I'm sorry, the crowd was still very into it. We were all like shrugging, like, oh, what's going on? But it was hilarious. It was actually a lot of fun. Our silver medalist, number 2 in our rankings of from worst to best panelists at this convention was
Vincent D'Onofrio, that's right, the Kingpin, the alien from Men in Black, and many other wonderful retro movies. And while he wasn't nearly as outspoken as some of the previous guests, he spoke with such passion and enthusiasm and loved to tell stories about what went on behind the scenes, what goes on in front of the camera. You got a full 360-degree view of what he did, of acting, and just what it meant to be there. And it was absolutely one of the best panels we'd seen the entire weekend.
I thought he was amazing. I thought he was great. He was brilliant. He was so much fun. I had no idea what to expect when I saw this guy. I wasn't familiar with him. I didn't see any of the new Daredevil stuff that he was involved with, but I hear he was amazing, and he really was talking about it with such enjoyment, and that he loved the part and how he had to get into the character. It was great stuff. This guy was really very proud of the roles he did. But the part that impressed me most was his Men in Black talk. Me and the Vespor both forgot, oh yeah, he was that bug in Men in Black. I really forgot. And he gave like a 15-minute discussion on how that came to be, and it was so amazing. I mean, that's the type of stuff you want to hear. It's like listening to a commentary on a DVD or a Blu-ray, you know, behind-the-scenes commentary where they're telling you how this all came to be, and he's telling it live right in front of us. And then he had a wrap-up where they reunited again, the director of Men in Black and him, like many years later, and they both told the story again, and they were both so proud of it. I thought it was great. I'm not a big Daredevil fan just because I never saw the show and I hated the original movie. We don't need to go there. But lots of fun. This guy was a blast. I could have listened to him all day. Answered every single question the fans had. Unlike the others, he wanted to talk to fans. He wanted fans' questions, and he wanted to answer every one of them completely. It's time for that drum roll that we like so much, as we're about to announce our number 1 gold medalist of this entire convention, of all the panels that we saw at least. Our number 1 gold medalist is
Richard Dreyfuss. That's right, the guy from Jaws who has done so many movies, including American Graffiti. The thing that put him over the top was his sincerity, his excitement to be there. Of all the panelists, he was the most expressive and interesting person. He got you involved in what he was saying. He answered all the questions with excitement. He elaborated. He made you feel what was going on. And contrary to popular belief, he was actually very congenial. And according to rumors, he didn't used to be that way, and he even confirmed that until 3 years ago. He was exactly the tyrant that they said he used to be.
Yeah, I was impressed. He's a brilliant actor. You cannot say Richard Dreyfuss is not a brilliant actor. You don't have to get along with him. You don't have to like him, but you do have to admit this guy is a great actor. Anytime he's on screen, he steals the show, and he's brilliant. Even in Jaws, in his silly part, he really was like one of the highlights of the whole movie. So I didn't know what to expect, because we're getting a very old and a very later in life Richard Dreyfuss, and you've heard all the rumors, and he's mellowed out in his old age. He's now a writer. He deserved this number 1. He came out of nowhere. You know when you have that out of nowhere finished. Like, wow, we didn't see that coming. That's Richard Dreyfuss. It was Richard Dreyfuss who won this because he checked off all 3 of our boxes that we had. He really cared about every single fan there. He wanted to answer every single question. He was on mark the whole time. He spoke eloquently. He was honest. You did not feel this man was a phony. This guy was as sincere and honest as possible, admitting things that you probably shouldn't be admitting, but proud to admit these things. That's our top 10, and agree or disagree, let us know what you thought, of course. We always want to hear your opinions, and please also let us know if there was any panels that we didn't see that you loved and that we missed out on, or if any you felt were even worse than the ones we saw. Yeah, please let us know.
And as just a reminder, this is all on our experiences and our viewpoints. The amount that you enjoy a panelist will change on how much of a fan you are, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And now it is time to wrap up this edition of Vesper's Convention Reviews, GalaxyCon Columbus 2022, but with our final ranking. And we have a lot to say. This was the biggest convention we did this whole year, and I can't wait to go into my thoughts, but as always, the star of our show, Vesper, starts things off. Vesper, start your final review of the overall experience of our 3 days at GalaxyCon Columbus 2022.
Well, to begin with, I'm going to go over the positives. First is parking. Now, while you could have gone deeper into Columbus to find free parking, the parking for a day was $20, which is not bad. And the best part was it was in a parking garage, folks. Huge plus. Parking is very important. Secondly, there was actually a cafeteria that you could get into and actually eat food at. That was a huge problem with the other cons we had. Easy food, easy drink access. Very important, especially if you're getting hot and sweaty. Another huge plus is the fact that for the most part, except for a few snafus, everything was relatively organized. Another huge plus here is the fact they had 3 stages for panelists, and they kept them going constantly, and for the most part they were well organized. And then lastly, the exhibit floor was done perfectly. Even in the height of the madness on Saturday, I could easily walk between all the vendors and look at them and not feel like I'm getting shoved out of the way or going to get run over by somebody walking through. And lastly, the amount of cosplayers was through the roof, and they were very good at what they did, and we even took a few pictures of them. Now, that's what I thought were the pluses. The downsides of this was there were some strange rules in there, or VIP that just was unnecessary. You have to walk 50 feet down this other way to come in to walk 50 feet back the other way. To me, it didn't make me feel the VIP badge did anything really special other than to get you in front of the autograph line. So if you weren't getting autographs, the VIP was next to useless, except for having a cool thing said. You're a very important person. Another thing that I found a problem was the organization at some of these events were totally off. And the biggest problem I felt with the entire con was its moderators. They took a lot away from every single panel we had done, except for like 2 of them. That to me was the biggest problem of the con. And because of all this, there are many more pluses than there were downsides to me. And because of this, I'm actually going to give it a 4-star rating, even though this is their first time in Columbus. They brought in most of the workers from all their other cons, so it was very well organized, and the improvements that can be done is more on an individual basis, like with the moderators, than it is for the con as a whole.
Alright, so Ramsis here, and my take on this is, this was a very big convention in the Midwest section of the United States. I thought they did a great job here. Columbus, Ohio is a nice central location, a lot of people from all over. The Greater Columbus Convention Center is gigantic, a really huge, massive place. It was perfect to hold a convention, and they had something going on in every single one of these rooms at all times. And the best part was the vendors row was amazing. It just went on and on for miles and miles, and you had every type of vendor you could think of. Really great. I have so many good things to say about it. And yes, it got busy on Saturday like every single convention in the history of conventions does, and they did a good job. They kept it very well organized. Security kept things very well maintained. So that's the positives. Now, the negatives are they did have some flubs and some mess ups on Friday especially, but they were really lost in some things. As Spencer mentioned, the VIP thing made no sense. You have very limited doors in the place, so you have an A door and a B door. The A door is for VIP, walk a few feet. The B door is for everybody else. Why? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Who cares what door you're walking? I'm VIP. I get to walk in the door with A. That's all it meant, and it was really stupid, honestly. Give the VIP something more important than that. The guy who did the Kermit the Frog voice doing a live commentary while we watched it, that was great. I really enjoyed it, but I could barely watch the movie, very disappointing, and the organization to get us in that room, very disappointing. And I am going to piggyback on what Vespor said. The moderators are a very big negative here. Some of them think they're the star of the show or the reason that we're here. And this happens a lot. We've seen this happen before, where someone on stage, either the celebrity or a moderator, gets a little ahead of themselves and thinks that they're the star of the show here and that's what it's all about, and who cares about the fans waiting there and dying to see the celebrity and ask questions. No, it's about me. Very obnoxious and disgusting. And this happened a lot where minutes upon minutes were just run down because these moderators wouldn't shut up and let the fans have some questions. And that's why I appreciated ones like William Shatner and even John Delancey, who didn't want the moderators, just wanted the fans to talk. I appreciated it, but I also realized you need the moderator, so it's a double-edged sword. You need the moderator, otherwise these celebrities go unhinged, but you also need moderators to not overdo it, otherwise you get nothing. So you need something in the middle, and hopefully as time goes on, they will get better with this. I love the A-list celebrities here. That's another thing I am going to give them great props. Some of the celebrities here were great. A lot of them were disappointing, again, because of the nature of the way the world is. They have to be a little more careful. They're a little depressed. Some are bitter, some are angry, some are happy. They really got great celebrities at this convention. Surprisingly, the only Power Ranger they were going to have was Jason David Frank, who sadly took his life right before this convention was about to take place, but it was missing a Power Ranger presence, I will say. The food was wonderful. You know, even when we walked to that Boston pizza, that was great. You know, you're right in downtown Columbus in this location, and Columbus is a nice city. It's a little weird. I don't know Columbus too well, but the built-up parts are beautiful. You have the great hockey stadium right there. You have all the brick roads and the nice restaurants all there for the eating. It was great. And even if you don't want to leave, there's plenty of food choices right there in the convention center itself. So I really had a lot of fun at this convention. I would definitely do it again. I'm hoping for different celebrities though. That's what I'm a little worried about. I don't want the same exact wrestlers and the same exact Star Trek actors over and over again. I hope they mix it up a little bit. I'm gonna give it 4 stars also. I really enjoyed this. You know, when you compare the 3 we did, this was the creme de la creme, the top of the ones we saw. And there's hundreds of conventions, of course. I'm sure there's 5 stars, 1 stars, everything in between. We're gonna try to mix it up if the opportunity presents itself to do so. 4 stars, lots of fun. I would definitely do it again. A few things I mentioned are downsides. They can fix this. This is all very fixable. We'll see what happens next year, but that's my thoughts on the overall feeling of our attending Columbus's convention this year. With that all said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and
Ring that bell.
And be back for more next time. We're going to be doing a lot more conventions in season 3, so definitely stay tuned for that.
Wait, Ramses. You forgot the most important thing about this convention.
What's that?